year is 10191 AG. You sit in a megastructure module, gazing out at the street below, bustling with movement, commerce, music. What do you hear? What is the sound of the future? That's likely a question composer Hans Zimmer and sound designer Mark Mangini had to consider when creating the sound world for Denis Villeneuve's Dune. A world enriched with its diversity of cultures, each with their prayers, rituals, marches, chants, diegetic music that formed an integral part of the world building. Having collaborated before in Blade Runner 2049, Zimmer figured music, like with any other aspect of culture, is a consequence of its context. Every historic period has its instruments and practices. So as for the distant future, will it be electronic? Quite the familiar trope, but what if it were more acoustic? Or maybe even sacred? This sort of speculation has always been very fun for me, and while doing research for this video, I actually found some fascinating reasons as to why music and culture in general might once again lean toward the mystic rather than the secularism we're so used to today. Now, I can already see you asking, why does any of this matter? Well, first off, imagination's fun. Secondly, the fact that I'm even thinking about this goes to show how deeply immersive Villeneuve's adaptation was. Thomas Flight actually already did a fantastic motivic analysis of the score. In it, he talks about the dramatic aspects as well as how Zimmer implements his musical material. This video aims to figure out where that material comes from, so where Thomas's video ends,
it's a score that takes the book's metaphysical and mystical elements, which take a backseat in the dialogue and exposition in the film, and weaves them into the story.
This one begins. The consensus that I've gathered and agree with from watching other videos about this film is that it manages to be dramatic while also remaining grounded. Each production department seems to have approached the project as if they had gone to Arrakis with a small documentary crew. And I'd like to make the case that Zimmer approached the score in a similar way. But how does one make a film score feel grounded? Think about it this way. Most film scores are approached from the third-person perspective. They figuratively sit on our side of the screen. They usually concern themselves only with the emotional content of the film, so they serve as an abstract form of narration. It's why in Star Wars, the Emperor's arrival to the Death Star can be announced with a brass fanfare. Logically, that makes no sense. It's just really cool. That is not the case with Dune though. Here the music emerges from within the world itself. It often blends the line between diegetic and non-diegetic, but more importantly, it consistently reflects an aspect of one of the many fictitious Dune cultures. Every artistic decision in this film seems to always be backed up with a justification, some historical or political principle. The core of the story itself is based on author Frank Herbert's political views. He uses principles like the cyclical theory of history to paint a very believable picture of the distant future. The theory, proposed by historian Oswald Spengler, looks something like this. If in a chart you were to map out human societal advancement, you would likely notice cycles of growth and decay, a depiction of how societies grow only to ultimately crumble under their own weight. Think of the 31 Egyptian dynasties or the rise and fall of the Western empires. Now, adjusting our sights to the future based on the patterns of the past, we might observe a similar pattern, a never-ending cycle of utopia and dystopia depending on how far into the future you are. In Dune's lore, before the formation of the Spacing Guild in 12101 CE, humans rely on AI navigation for faster-than-light travel. Then, a group called the Titans overthrew the old empire. But as they carelessly ruled their subjects, their over-reliance on thinking machines accidentally gave rise to Omnius, the superintelligence that enslaved humanity. So humans fought back, destroying every thinking machine in the Butlerian Jihad. And you know the rest. They started taking spice to expand their consciousness to fulfill the roles machines once did. You see, rise and fall. Cool stuff. The implications this has on the sound of the film come from the philosophical shift brought on by the Butlerian Jihad. In a time where humanity had thoroughly explored technology and the stars, the next frontier naturally became the human mind. The self, the expansion of consciousness, prescience, genetic memory, these became the primary force of societal advancement. I believe these are the mystical elements Thomas Flight was talking about at the end of his video. These subliminal elements present in the musical symbolism of the score. This theme of reverence to the highest order becomes apparent through three major agents in the film. We have the Bene Gesserit and their reverence to the esoteric wisdom of their order, the Fremen and their reverence to profound mystery and prophecy, and the Harkonnen, displaying how a disconnect from contemplation leads to a lust for the material. In the score, the whisperous chant that surrounds the presence of a Bene Gesserit to me becomes synonymous to their secrecy. They fiercely protect their esoteric knowledge, and only they alone know the genetic makeup of every bloodline, not to mention the fact that they conceal the generational wisdom of their genetic memory within their order. They remind us that true power is quiet.
Put your right hand in the box.
They are the ones that control politics from the shadows. They are the embodiment of manipulation, seduction, and scheming.
Plans within plans.
We see in them the massively overlooked power of knowledge, which they use to deceive the Fremen into believing their creation, their design, the culmination of their genetic amalgamation is somehow a manifested divine figure. Fooled by the witches, we see the Fremen worship through prayer. We see a return to faith and religion, believing for the sake of believing and pleading to a supernatural force. This is the result of carefully dialing in legend with ignorance, because remove one's right to knowledge, and where do they have to turn to but to superstition? Of course, not all Fremen bought the Bene Gesserit prophecy, but in lines of dialogue like the we see that even the doubters weren't completely detached from messianic ideals. I love how these groups are two sides of the same coin, the coin of mysticism. On one hand, you have knowledge so profound it's not dissimilar to magic, and on the other one, reverence to the unknown. Remember that claim I made about mysticism near the beginning of the video? Well, who is to say that through our very real will to learn and explore, we wouldn't one day awaken Bene Gesserit-like mysticism in our own culture? A lot of us, regardless of whether we're born into a religious context or not, have this innate desire to worship. Some of us turn to art, others to science, others to religion and spirituality. We are drawn to mystery one way or another. Of course, there are those who only care about the mundane, which I totally respect. But it does make me question, if we were to remove this industrial order that we built to survive, would wonder become a universal trait in all humans? This detachment from the metaphysical is also explored in the film, although not too much in a flattering way. The Harkonnens occupy the clearest secular side of the story. They are industrial and unruly. They care only about power. They sit contrary to the Bene Gesserit human ideals that say that man can only be human if they can control their impulses.
They're not human, they're brutal.
Under that guise, Fate never passed the Gom Jabbar test. He simply kept his hand in the box to get enjoyment out of his own pain, desire, and humiliation. He was meant to be a dog on a leash. The oppressive force of the Harkonnens is felt through the heavy bass of their music. Zimmer abandons the vocal and acoustic elements and replaces them with industrial sounds, a consistent pulse that almost sounds like clockwork or like a show of force march. The Atreides' sinister transformation is heard through a blending of all the other previous musical material. Their humanistic ideals of loyalty and honor are heard in their military march. Even Paul rejected the power offered to him until his Harkonnen side got the best of him. We hear his desire for revenge turn his music from the Atreides ideals with Fremen influence, perhaps symbolizing his genuine love for them, into a Harkonnen-like feral lust for blood. His achievement of prescience also raises the question of whether his words are genuine or Bene Gesserit-like manipulation.
I will love you as long as I breathe.
Beyond the brilliant music of Zimmer's score, we see a philosophical reflection on power, belief, and control. It wonderfully echoes Herbert's warning against charismatic leaders, and it elevates the mystical themes of consciousness and human power from something we can acknowledge to something we can feel. If you enjoyed the original music I wrote for this video and would like me to work on your film or short, please do not hesitate to reach out to me through the means in the description. I would love to get in touch with you. I really hope you enjoyed watching. Please keep in mind that this is all my subjective opinion. I don't really regard this in my subsequent videos as video essays necessarily, but more as video journals. They're my means of expressing what art means to me. So I would love to hear what Dune means to you. Have a very belated Happy New Year's.